guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Sammy, a wedding and portrait photographer based out of the DC area, and in this video I'm going to be talking about wedding day timelines, giving you a bunch of sample timelines to use for your wedding or a timeline to use if you are photographing a wedding. I actually made a free resource for photographers for wedding day timelines for each part of the year. It's broken up by the month and based on when the sun is setting, and also there's two versions of each timeline depending on when whether or not the couple wants to do a first look. That free resource in the link down below, and now I'm going to show you how to draft a timeline. So the most important thing when it comes to getting really good photos on a wedding day if you're a photographer is light. So in order to get the best light, you have to plan for the best light around the sunset. So that's why I create all my timelines with my couples, and what I'm going to show you here too, around when the sun is setting. Just for simplicity, I'm going to be using September because that's kind of like the most common wedding month, or fall. So in September, the sun in my area will actually set at around 8 o'clock. So the first rule of thumb is to work 3 hours backwards from the sunset. So if the sun is setting at 8 o'clock, you'll want to have your ceremony no later than 5 o'clock. Okay, and then what I like to do is if you're having your ceremony at 5 o'clock, I back up 4 more hours to start my photography. So I like to start photography 4 hours before the ceremony, no matter what. So even if the couple is doing a first look or not doing a first look, 4 hours before the ceremony usually gives me enough time to get all the things documented that I need to. So 4 hours before the ceremony would take us to a 1 o'clock start time. So the first hour that I start shooting, I usually do the venue, any shots of girls in robes, and detail shots. And then in that time, if I have extra time, I'm just grabbing candidates of people getting ready. And then at 2 o'clock, I will start doing the getting ready with the first partner or the groom. Usually it's the groom, just because the bride's dress takes a little bit more time, and usually as soon as the bride puts the dress on, it's time for the first look. So I try to do the groom's portraits first for about 45 minutes, or partner number one first for 45 minutes. And then that will take us to 2:45. At 2:45, I'll be able to do the bride getting ready or partner number 2 getting ready and putting the wedding dress on. Keep in mind there are different ways to do this. If you had a second shooter, you could have them go to the groom or go to the first partner, and then you stay with the bride and one partner and just do more photos during that time. That's really the advantage of a second shooter, is that you can do more photos during that time. But if I'm just doing this as kind of a lead shooter, this is how I would set it up. And at 3:30, after that's done, if the couple is doing a first look, we would do the first look and then couples photos. And if they're not doing the first look, I actually will take the bridal party out separately. The main difference is that if they don't want to do a first look, we can still utilize that time to get a lot of the bridal party photos done, since during the cocktail hour, we won't have had any time to do bride and groom photos. The more of the bridal party that we can do earlier in the day will give us more time during cocktail hour to do the bride and groom photos. So if you are doing the bridal party separately, it does take a little bit more time than if we were to do them all together, because you do have to gather people and get them all out of wherever they are getting ready and to the location of where you're doing those photos. So that's why there's a little bit of more time built in for that, and I like to do, group photos and individuals with each person in the bridal party, so it's a little bit more time consuming than it might appear when you're doing them separately. That would take us to 4:45, so that would give us a 15-minute break before the ceremony. I find it super important as a photographer to have a 15-minute break for, not for taking photos, but for getting set up for the ceremony. So the couple is really taking a break. What we're doing is scouting, positioning myself and the second shooter, and just figuring out where we're going to be standing during the ceremony. And then at 5 o'clock would be the ceremony. Ceremony times vary. Typically they're 30 minutes, but if it's a special ceremony, it could be longer, it could be shorter. So this, for the purposes of this timeline, it's just 30 minutes. That would take us to 5:30, so that would be the cocktail hour, which would be a perfect time to do family photos in either case. I've had experiences in the past where we've tried to do family photos, before the ceremony, which is a great option if all family members are present. But I found that the easiest and the most stress-free way is to just do family photos in either case after the ceremony, because they're likely all standing right there in the front row, or they're all just already gathered and completely ready for pictures. One thing that really can take a lot of time is if one family member is not present. That can take up 10 to 15 minutes, and we, as you can see in this timeline, don't really have 10 to 15 minutes to be waiting for someone, because that will really, take away from the photos. So I like to do family photos right there, right after the ceremony, usually at the ceremony site, and I have my couples make a list of 10 to 15 combinations for what they want in these family photos, just so that I can go down the list and make sure that everything is captured. Family photos usually take 15 to 20 minutes, and when the cocktail hour starts, I'll usually have my second shooter. If I have a second shooter that day, go ahead and photograph the cocktail hour while I'm doing family photos. So that would take us to about 5:50, and then we'll do like 10 or 15 minutes of couples just married photos if we've already done the first look and more couples photos earlier in the day. If the couple has not seen each other and they're comfortable with not attending their cocktail hour, I'll usually take that whole 40 minutes, the rest of that cocktail hour, just to take them all around the venue and doing lots of bride and groom portraits, because that's really the only time that they've seen each other and can be together just by themselves for portraits. So try to maximize the most of that 45 minutes. So that would take us to 6:30 or an entrance to the reception. Depending on the timeline for the day, I'll also squeeze in somewhere in here to photograph the details of the reception. If I'm unable to do that, I'll send my second shooter over earlier in the day. So that just varies wedding to wedding depending on when the reception will be ready. But either way, at 6:30, they're going to be entering to the reception. I try to get set up with all my lights and my light stands for the reception set up before they even enter, because more often than not, they're entering into a first dance or entering into something, and the sun can actually set quicker than you think. So I try to set up everything in the morning or just, before they enter to that reception. That way I'm not carrying around light stands during the reception. So then there's usually dinner and speeches. During dinner, I actually don't usually photograph people actually eating. I've just found people don't like it. So I will either also eat dinner or just be photographing decor or things like that just in the meantime. And then there's usually speeches. I always photograph speeches and guest reactions to those speeches. And then they'll do the first dance, parent dances, things like that, all usually in the same place. And all of that will take us to around sunset for this timeline. So for this timeline, the sun is going to set at 8. So I try to take the couple out 7:45 just for like 5 to 7 minutes just to get a couple shots with the actual sun setting. Then from there, we'll go back in. I'll just do more dancing photos or just candids of guests. I try to go around the wedding and ask each guest if they want a picture, so that at least everyone in the wedding is somehow in the gallery. So if I haven't done that already, I'll usually do that after sunset photos. Just go to each table, say, hi, can I get a picture of this group? And then that way everyone at their wedding is usually accounted for in their wedding gallery. So 15 minutes before this 8 hours of coverage ends is when I'll usually recommend couples do their sparkler exit or any kind of exit they're interested in. If they're not interested in an exit, then I usually recommend just doing a couple nighttime photos outside, either with the car or just outside the venue, just to kind of end the wedding album with like a last photo. So this timeline was based on an 8 o'clock sunset. So if you want to download the freebie that I mentioned below, it will show you different timelines based on 5:30 sunset, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock sunset, all different times of the year. And also again, 2 versions of each. So one for if they're doing a first look and one for if they're not. So you can easily send them to your couples or just kind of use them on consultation calls. That's what I typically do. But I hope you found this video helpful. Please leave a comment below if you do anything different with your timelines, if you thought anything about this video was insightful, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I make a new YouTube video here on YouTube every week. I'll see you next week.